first part that we see of the canvas is that of the customers, because it is undoubtedly one of the most fundamental parts, and in which we have to think about which are the people completely on target with what we are trying to do. So let's consider that this is the starting point of any type of company, because if we try to start but we don't know who our customers are, it will be very difficult to be successful. The customer side is the one completely on the right, so be careful, because when you start with the canvas, there is not always a completely linear trend. You consider that the canvas tries to summarize the whole company. Let's start from the right, because that's where the customers belong. The main question is to understand who these customers are, who are the buyer personas, who are the people interested in the value proposition you've made and that want to buy directly from you. Consider that there may be more than one. So on the canvas, you can put different types of buyer personas depending on the tool, so you can have different profiles, and these can be directly told on the canvas, perhaps trying to create a dummy image. When we talk about buyer personas, in fact, we are talking about a person who is not really real, but that's a person that we try to create because it gives us a bit of an idea of what a typical customer could look like. It helps us to understand where I find them, why they address our company directly, and what kind of product they might be really interested in. In the part of buyer personas, we are talking about people who may not actually be real, but we try to create profiles where, depending on certain characteristics, they are the ones who could be really interested in what we are trying to sell. We really have to think about what kind of problem we're trying to solve for these people, because when we talk about customers, we really have to understand the individual target. It's not a matter of understanding that we deal with people living in big cities, but understanding why they might want to meet us instead of going directly to competitors. Let's be as specific as possible in the part of why they should buy from us. The more you do your research and testing, the better this profile will be. One of the suggestions that is given is to fall in love with the problem and not with the solution. Then try to think of people just as if they were also your friends or coworkers. Why should they come to you if there are already many other solutions on the market? Or if your product service is new, why should they really be convinced that they want to buy from you? This part will be directly related to the value proposition part. Consider that it's part of the problem to get people to choose your company, product, or service. There is a structure that is the one that is done by Hootsuite, which can be very useful for creating a single profile. There are also other tools that you can find directly online. For example, hotspots or lots of templates. We thought of using this one because it is one of the most popular, also the easiest to understand, because it starts from a kind of small Excel file where you can directly put information. Also, in this case, you can download this template, which is completely free. If we start talking about our target audience, we need to understand where these people are coming from, so a background element can certainly be very useful. Let's consider that recently the focus on consumer or customer types is less on the demographic aspect, although it can give us an idea. For example, if we have a company that deals with people who live in nursing homes, it will certainly be different than selling an e-commerce that deals with sporting goods. However, this part is not so fundamental because people are now much more divided into clusters, therefore into small groups, for a matter of searching for a problem and, above all, for a solution to the problem. Individual types of interest may be common to people, but they are very different from each other. So be careful because if you start with the demographic part, the risk is to block many types of cues that can come out when you do some cluster searches. There are other types of aspects that you can enhance, for example, the social media part. More and more, the business model canvas is done when you have a company that also needs to position itself on a digital market, or in any case in which the technological aspect is quite relevant. So understanding which are the best social networks to communicate with your potential customers is certainly very useful as well. Let's also consider that it is necessary to understand what the spending power of these customers is, to understand whether they are the people who will buy this solution or not, because these two things do not always go directly hand in hand. Let's also consider that in these structures there is always a part of availability to put information that may be very important to you, but that is not part of the structure. For example, on very specific targets, maybe you can put more things. So feel free to modify and customize this template. Clearly, there is a part that differs in case you are B2B or B2C. That is, if you sell to a company B2B or if you sell to an end consumer B2C. In principle, it is also fine to put both of these solutions if the type of business requires it. For example, there are types of companies that sell both to professionals in the sector, for example, in the beauty field, as well as people who perhaps want products directly at home. So consider that both can be put in the sense that the space in the canvas is very large and you can decide what information you want to put. For example, in the B2B field, understanding the size of the company and who decides is really very important. You also have to put what their challenges are and above all the goals that your potential customers have. This is one of the most important parts because, as we said, it is not so much the demographic part, the one that leads people to choose one company over another, but precisely what motivates them to make certain types of choices. Explaining why they come directly to you should also be linked with an improvement goal. It is necessary to try to understand if there are any barriers or issues because of which a target in which you are very interested does not buy from you at the moment. This understanding can be put in the canvas because in this case we could have different segments and could also understand what are the activities connected with each individual segment. We also need to think about how we can try to reach customers in terms of messages, in terms of what we call tone of voice. We should understand if it is a target who likes the joke or who likes to be very serious. So for example, if we go to professionals, if we talk to accountants, it is likely to be a more serious communication rather than the one that could be present on channels such as Snapchat. So let's be careful because depending on the people, there will also be different ways to contact them. There is a specific section of the canvas for this, but let's consider that even the part of messages that are the strongest for the individual target can be useful to be put in this part that is precisely corresponding to the customers. Overall, we have a very extensive list of individual types of information to put. As we said, you could also have 3 or 4 different targets. Consider that from the perspective of the canvas. When it is revised, you will realize that perhaps not all of them are so fundamental, and therefore, little by little, you will also try to understand where to focus your resources. However, in a first phase, putting a few more can also be useful to discuss with your team. There is an example with a startup called Sharewood, which, for example, deals with the outdoors. They do very interesting things because they allow you to rent different types of sports equipment. So thinking about customers, even just by seeing this image, even if you don't know this type of reality, you understand that they are people who want to be in contact with nature, who may have a slightly higher spending availability. So maybe they don't want to buy skis directly, but they like to do things of this type also for a matter of sustainability. So you start to get a little bit of an idea of what kind of people they are. Think about some of the companies you like. What might be some ideas to consider? Another starting point could be on the B2B market. So in the case of Milkman, which is still a startup that deals with optimization and delivery, you can see that in terms of communication, it is much more serious. On its website, it shows the part with IKEA, with Zara, and with Nespresso, as if to say that it takes care of their shipping part. Here the target is much more the company because we are talking about the enterprise, for example, the platform. On this site, we have a completely different target from the previous one, which is made up of companies. Evidently, there are people who sell directly online and need very technological solutions, such as Milkman. There is a third case, that of La Cerba. If we go to their website, we see that it is a school that deals with developing skills. The slogan is, "Learn the skills of the future today." Here we are addressing people who are certainly very interested in discovering something new about the digital world, and therefore we have an even different target. There are people that may have many years of experience or that are very young, but that are trying to improve their skills. So consider that already from the landing page, from the first page of each site. You can understand who the targets are for each individual type of company. So why is this crucial for the business model canvas? Because our target is the base of the company. Without this part, it is practically useless to start with a company because it means that we started in a very courageous way but without foundation. So studying the customer side is very important for the whole next part and for the part where we talk about our future. For example, as I said here, putting different types of targets which may not be immediately affected but can give you a very useful structure for the future, and above all are the leitmotif of the entire business model canvas, because if we talk about our customers, all the activities are devoted to improving the solution with the customers. So from this point of view, we can also see it with large companies such as Netflix, Facebook, and Tesla.